Hey folks, this your girl Lotus Riche from Lotus Riche Ignites Life Coaching and Consulting. And guess who I have here today? She is the author of this wonderful book, The Pursuit of Purpose, none other than Dr. Sandra Brooks. And today we have Dr. Brooks on with us to say, hey, thank you for you. And thank you for coming.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, fantastic. So, Dr. Brooks, we have talked about your book on a couple of occasions on various shows and things of that nature. And we wanted to kind of have you on with me today to talk about the pursuit of purpose. So I just wanted to ask you a couple of things about the book.
Okay.
Hey, Gregory, how you doing? I'm happy to see you. Thanks for joining. And some of our guests have a couple of questions for you. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions if you would indulge us a bit. So first things first, the pursuit of purpose. Can you tell us how you came to write this book?
Well, one of the things I've always been interested in is why God put me here. I've had quite a few diverse experiences in life, and I often wondered, is there more? Mm-hmm. That I didn't believe that God could create me and place me here and not have a reason.
Right.
So in my search, I found a lot of wisdom and I found out a lot of things. And one of the things that I had a lot of problems with is because I'm good at a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But I needed to focus on the one thing that God put me here to do and understand that all those other things that I was good at were only the tools that God gave me so that I could accomplish what he placed me here for. And what I came to understand is that it's a process that we have to go through. Because when we arrive on earth as babies, we're programmed one way. But what happens is that as we begin to grow, the fears, the concerns, the prejudices, the blessings, all of those things that we experience with our families reprograms us to a point that we forget the assignment that we were sent for, and that we have to learn how to become masters of investigation to find the clues within ourselves, to find out exactly what that purpose was again. So this book talks about my journey into finding me.
Awesome, fantastic. And something that you said that I've heard many, many people say who are very learned and who are millionaires, and some are actually billionaires. I remember when I was overseas, I used to listen to something that Tyler Perry used to say all the time, and he would talk about not kind of spreading your seeds all over the place because you don't have enough water to water all the seeds. And then what typically happens is nothing works because you just don't have enough water to spread it, so the seeds won't grow. And he always said, just focus on the one thing. And I took that literally, like he was speaking directly to me. Lotus, focus on the one thing. And then, of course, you know that there's a company called Keller Williams, right? And there's a gentleman, Gary Keller. I don't know if many of you are familiar with him, but Gary Keller wrote a book, a very famous book called The One Thing. And if you are trying to get ahead, look at that book. It's a great read, and you'll get extraordinary results. Danielle Pierce, she talked about it. She's a wonderful influencer right here on YouTube as well as Facebook, right here on Facebook. And she talks about getting the book, The One Thing. And I thought it was astonishing that you would say one thing.
One thing.
Okay. So with that being said, the one thing kind of takes me to I am. I am. And we were talking earlier today about I am. And as you know, many times I always convey to people that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and it's not the other way around. And I always talk about God being in us and that we are from source energy. And I always tell people, you have to be careful what you attach to your I am.
And that's exactly right.
So can you tell us, for those of you that may or may not know what the I am is that I'm speaking of? Hey, Daisy, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
In the book of Exodus, Moses asked God a very pointed question. Who should I say sent me? And God did not say God. He did not say Jehovah. He did not say Adonai. He said, I am that I am. When we talked earlier, the one thing that I said is that the greatest revelation that I have had of God was when I realized that I am is the first person present tense of the verb to be.
Right.
And so what that told me was that God is I am. And when the scripture talks about not taking God's name in vain, we think that we shouldn't attach God to it. But God is who he is. His name is I am. And if we would come to just an understanding that he is I am, he is who you need him to be in this present moment, which is the only moment that we have, then we could understand that we need to be careful what we attach to I am, because God is not broke.
Right.
God is not sick. God is not depressed. And that we need to be careful when we say, I am, whatever it is that we put behind it.
Right.
Because the other part of this is that the life and death, the power of life and death is in the tongue. Because not only are we cursing God and taking his name in vain, but we're cursing our own lives by what we put behind that I am, if it's something that God is not.
Right.
And that was the conversation that we started having, that led into quite a few other things. And when you start to focus on things, one of the things that you want to do is, because none of us are where we should be, because what we're doing through our lives is going through a process. And so in that process, the hope is that we are making progress towards some destination.
Right.
And so the thing is that we need to discover who we are and why we're here. One of the things that I said in the book was that each and every one of us is a different personification and manifestation of who God is. That when God looked down from heaven and he looked down onto the earth, he saw a problem. And when he saw that problem, he reached inside of himself and pulled out the answer. And he took that answer and he planted it into a mother's womb and allowed a man to actually fertilize that seed. And that woman became the incubator to bring that seed forth, and that seed was you. So now you have to figure out what the problem is that you came here to answer.
It was me.
It was you.
It was me. It was them,
It
our
was
viewers.
them.
So it was our viewers.
Yes.
It was all of us.
Yes. Each one of us is assigned to answer a problem. So what is the problem that you were assigned to answer? We know, and we've heard this said from the pulpit many times, that a lot of the gifts that God has placed on the earth are rotting in the graveyard. How do we not know that the cure for the common cold is rotting in a grave somewhere?
So let's take it from the pulpit. Let's take it from the pulpit and let's bring it out in secular society, if you will. Okay. And when I say that, what I mean is the ministers in the pulpit don't only say this. You have some of the most profound influences on the planet, like Les Brown. You hear me talk about him all the time. Eric Thomas. You hear just even Gandhi has said this. Mother Teresa say the same things. And I'm reaching back to Gandhi. I'm reaching back to Mother Teresa because it's old and it's new. It is the now. Yes, so whatever century you're from, whatever generation you're from, we got to remember, this is the now. And all the most intelligent people are saying that. Einstein, okay? Abraham Lincoln back in his day was really saying the same thing. It is you. It is me.
That's right.
It is you.
And have you noticed that we tend to migrate to self-help books.
Yes.
We tend to migrate to conferences and
Mhm.
workshops and webinars and speakers
Mhm.
who deal with self-help.
Right.
Because what's happening
Mhm.
is that we are actually seeking significance. We're
Right.
seeking purpose because something
Mhm.
inside of us is telling us that we are here for a reason.
Purpose. Right.
It cannot be that God had nothing else to do.
Mhm.
That we are all here on assignment. So now, what is the assignment?
You know, the funny thing is, you hear people like Oprah Winfrey, Ayala Van Zant, um, just even Nikola Tesla. One of the major things that they always share with us is to find our purpose. And once we know our purpose, then we can move into our excellence of performing that purpose if we make a decision.
Right.
In Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, one of the first chapters is
make a decision.
Decision. So you have to make a decision. And sometimes people say that they can't make a decision because they can't see it for themselves. And I heard Les Brown say one time that, you know, if you're waiting on somebody, and he didn't put it this way, but basically what he was saying is you're waiting on that person to give you validation so that you can make the decision to move into your excellence, but they can't see it for you. So if they can't see it for you, guess what? They can't see it for themselves.
Right.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to share, because a point you hit on was another thing that Les Brown also talked about, that the graveyard is one of the richest places on earth.
Right.
And you talked about it because so many books, so many creations die right inside of us, and we take them to the grave, never to be born, because we don't speak it into action and we don't move into action to bring it into manifestation.
It is difficult for some people. One of the things, I teach a course at Southern New Hampshire University. And in that course, what we do is teach leadership by teaching people who they are and who they are as a leader. And what we find is that there's 16 different distinct personalities. And working with the students with their particular personality, their particular traits, teaching them how to get from where they are to where they need to be. But what happens in society when you don't have that type of training, there are some personalities that need something outside of themselves to be an impetus to get them where they need to be. There are others that you don't have to tell them anything.
Right.
They're just going to jump for it, and they're going to go for it, and you can't stop them.
Right.
And so there are a lot of people that they may wonder, well, why am I here?
Right.
But they're not going to go for it. And some of this stuff is personality. Some of this is environmental. One of the things that I can tell you, when you read my book, I talk a lot. I'm very transparent about my parents, how I grew up, and the experiences that I have gone through and the things that I've gone through with God. And one of the things is that when I was born, my mother was very fearful. And I have come to realize that a lot of the things that we feel when we're pregnant with our children, we pass on to them because they are spiritual things. And so I grew up with a stronghold of fear over my life. And this may be what's strange to some people.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily fear of failure.
Right.
Sometimes it's fear of success. Sometimes it's fear of the greatness that God has put inside of you,
right,
because you can't control it. I have been through a lot of things in my life. I am a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. There were things that I had to overcome in order to just get this book written, because it took me years to write this book. God talked to me about this book in 1995, but the book wasn't published until 2016.
Wow.
Because there were some things inside of me that I had to take care of and resolve before I could even get my self-esteem to the point that I could write what God was giving me.
And you know, Doc, a lot of folks say that a lot of their hopes and dreams were kept on hold because of fear. I know I've even said this many times before. That has been the case with me as well. And many profound speakers, actors, doctors, lawyers, you name it, across the globe have experienced that. And one thing that I think they all had in common is that they understood that they just had to get started.
Yes.
They had the burning desire, many of them, but they had fear. And as Les Brown and many other wonderful influencers say, it's false evidence appearing real. So I wanted to ask those of you that have taken your time out to join us, how many of you have succumbed and are currently succumbing to false evidence appearing real? You're too afraid to move. And you know what? Sometimes people say, if someone told you that you can do, be, or have anything you want, guaranteed without failure, how many of you would move into your excellence?
Exactly right.
You know what my answer is?
What?
Many still will not move.
No, they won't.
Many still will not move. So those of you that's looking on, if you've ever felt this way, give me a thumbs up, hearts, whatever you want. Text something in. Let me know that you identify with this, because I know I'm not preaching to the choir, okay? Let me know that you've dealt with it and how you've dealt with it. So, hey, Dana, nice to see you. Coretta Smith, hey, how you doing? Jermaine Taylor, hey, how you doing? Latifa Muhammad, good to see you out of Charlotte. Mario Evans, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you. So we've got some magnificent folks on here. We've got some authors. We've got people running for public office on here that I'm sure has been where you are. So I challenge you, anyone that's ready to be transparent, anyone that can identify with what Dr. Brooks is saying about fear kind of stopping you from doing what you want. Many of you are authors, and you know firsthand, a lot of you guys worry about if somebody's going to buy your book or not. A lot of you worry about what your family's going to say, what your so-called friends are going to say. But guess what? In the pursuit of purpose, when you find out who you are, the I am shows up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you understand how to answer the question of who am I?
Awesome. So I wanted to ask this question as well, because you talked about God, but you said he, and many of us refer to God as he because society has taught us that God is a man. But the Christian church talked to us about the Trinity, but it never says that the Trinity, never there is a woman there. So can you kind of identify what God is? Because we always genderfy God.
And we genderfy God because that's the way our human minds work. One of the things that I learned from John Calvin was that even though we read what is said in the word, we have a tendency to place it in different levels and categories, genders, and all of that. But God, it tells you specifically that God is not a man. God is an entity. He's a spirit, which is why he says we have to worship him in spirit and in truth. And the thing that we cannot understand, especially when you brought up the Trinity, the Godhead, that we want to say is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is the same spirit, but that spirit has to manifest and personify itself in whatever way that you need it to be done, which takes us back to the discussion of the I am.
Yes.
One of the things that I really loved a few years ago was when the Shack came out, because that really challenged people's spirituality and people's thoughts about God. When in the book and in the movie that God was an African American woman, and it upset so many people in Christian society. But God said that in Christ Jesus, there is neither male nor female.
Right.
So why are we upset that if this is somebody's testimony of what God did for them and how God manifests for them, how can we try to place God in a box and say that because to him God manifested as an African American female, that it can't be true?
Right.
Because God is going to come to you however way he has to. Remember, he came to Moses as a burning bush.
Yes.
So the thing is that and one of the things that I'm coming to realize is that as humanity, we need to stop taking labels off, and that's what male, female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, rich, poor, they're labels that we have given. There is one race. It's the human race. There is one God. I don't know what you call him. I call him or her. To me, he's Papa. To you, he may be Mother. And I know that people got upset with Oprah at one point because she referred to Mother.
Yes.
But God is whoever you need God to be.
And then this is the thing, too. When we refer to the Bible, God conveyed to the masses that we were created in God's like image. Right. So my thought process has always been, if I'm created in God's like image, how can God create a woman if God is not both all encompassing? And I say that because when I look at my physicality, but then when I became more enlightened and I understand now that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, now I understand that I am a spirit that is inhabiting this body, because this body is just the vessel in which I am blessed to move around in this dimension.
And that's what I was getting ready to say, that the thing that we call male or female is basically a container. That thing that we spend most of our days and hours trying to perfect is the container. But we have got to learn how to begin to perfect the real person that resides inside the container, and that's our spirit. Because once this container ceases to function, then we graduate right back from whence we came.
So we go back to source energy.
Right.
Okay. Because I understand over time that we are source energy and we will return to source energy. So Coretta Smith, Coretta Anita Smith says we are one race. So thank you so much. Like that. I appreciate that. And Angela just joined us. Hey, how you doing? Thank you for joining us. So that's an excellent point, Coretta, that you just made. We are one race. And I think the thought process of races kind of separates us. And I think because we succumb to that, it not only separates us on the human race plane, but it also separates us on the spiritual plane. That's why we have so many different churches and things of that nature, because people have been told and shown that we are so diversely different. And I believe in many ways we are diversely different, but at our core, we come from source energy. And this is one other thing I wanted to share. Joel Osteen he wrote a book, and the book is titled The Power of I Am. And I think it's a very good read. And I think once you start looking at it, you can understand what the I am is. But I think you explained it eloquently. But what Joe purported was that you have to be careful of what you add to your I am.
That's exactly right.
So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
My thing is this. When you start talking about the I am, and I want to get into another part of the conversation when I say this that we talked about earlier. When we start talking about the I am and we're calling things into existence, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about us being made in the image of God. If you go back to the beginning, to the book of Genesis, when God created the heavens and earth, God said.
Yes.
And whatever he said was what came into being.
Right, right.
That's one of the gifts that God has given us, is the power of our words.
Right.
And we have not understood that. Because once we say a word, it is in the atmosphere forever. You have to be careful what you're saying. And often we allow ourselves to speak when we're angry. We allow ourselves to speak when we're hurt. We allow ourselves to speak when we don't understand. And we start speaking things, and that stuff is in the atmosphere, and it is multiplying, because there is a law of multiplication in the earth that God put there, that whatever you sow, you're going to reap. But what we don't understand is that when you reap it multiplied. So I don't want to go out into the atmosphere and into the ether and say, I am sick.
Right.
Because now I'm telling the entire universe that I have an expectation of being sick.
And so when you tell the universe that you have an expectation of being sick, what happens then?
So the universe is going to treat you as you're sick. And what's coming to you, what you are actually going to bring into your presence and into your container and into your spirit, is sickness.
Oh, wow.
Now there's another element of this, because the kingdom of God, or as Matthew said, the kingdom of heaven, there's a place in Matthew 3 and Mark 1 where it says it's at hand.
Right.
Which means it now is. But it has another element of yet to come.
Right.
Now we've heard it said, and we've all said it, that the only time that we have is this present moment, because the past is gone and the present has yet to come. But when we start speaking things, when we start sowing seeds, that's right here in the present.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're sowing in the yet to come.
Right.
Now there's two elements of this. Now catch this, because when God starts talking about the 100-fold return, we talked about this earlier. We think that's 100 times, but it's not.
Right.
I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to start folding it. And I want to see if you can fold it 100 times. Because I challenge you to do that, because you can't. 100-fold return means that it keeps coming.
Right.
And it never stops. So what happens is when we speak a word and we start to proclaim that I live an abundant life. My life is abundant now. And I have blessings for this day. Then the next day comes and it becomes my now.
Right.
And I have blessings for that day. And the next day comes and it's the now. And I have the blessings for that day. Because it keeps coming, because it keeps multiplying, because you're continuing to sow it. And as long as you sow it, it's going to come back to you multiplied, and it's going to overtake you. Because the blessings become so great that you can't handle it all yourself. And that's why you hear people say that your blessings are for you, but they're also for you to share.
Right. And you know what? That brings up an interesting point, too, because Eckhart Tolle wrote a book in The Now, I think.
Yes.
And he also did an interview with Oprah Winfrey, and they talked about the book. And it was so profound that, and I have the book, but I was listening to it in the car probably a year or two ago, and he said that it is totally important for us, especially like first thing in the morning, when we wake up in the morning, we get into our cars to go to work. He said, stop in that moment. Stop in that moment. Breathe. Inhale. Be in the now of that moment of what it feels like to be in your car. Be in the now in that moment to feel gratitude in that moment.
That's right.
Jeff Martinetti Jr. always says, make every second count. And that is one thing that I think Eckhart Tolle was trying to tell us. We have to make every second count. But in order to make that very second that we're in count, we have to do what? Be in the moment, in the now. Because what we bring into the now, we have to remember, it sends out a ripple effect. There's an energy, there's a frequency. And guess what? We can also manifest more of the good stuff in the yet to come.
Right.
But it all depends on what we send out.
Right. And it all goes back to knowing who you are.
Yes.
Because if I know who I am, if I know and I understand and I believe and I walk as a child of God, I'm his daughter.
Right.
I'm his little girl. He's going to take care of me.
Of course.
I have to understand that. But see, the thing that happens, and I know we talked to a lady recently, and she was talking about ministry in countries like Africa, because it changes your perspective. What happens to us here in America, we have a sense or spirit of entitlement. And we believe that all these things that we see on TV and on these programs that they call reality TV, which are really not real, that we're supposed to have those things. And we just about sell our souls to have those things. If you have a TV and it's working, why do you need a 75-inch TV if you can't afford it? If you can afford it, by all means, do that. But you have people that can't afford it, and they're out there getting it because this person has it, or they saw it on TV, and that's supposed to be the way that we're supposed to live. And it is not. One of the things that Lotus and I talk about a lot is that we've got to get to a point where we begin to understand what it means to study to show yourself approved. That doesn't mean that you just read the Bible. Anybody can read.
That's right.
But you've got to study. You've got to understand. And you need to educate yourself on more than just Bible. And I'm here. I'm a pastor. I'm an overseer. You've got to know more than just Bible. You've got to know finances. Did God not give you finances to be a steward over? You've got to know about parenting. What is the appropriate way to parent your kids? Because those kids are gifts that God has given you to be a good steward over.
Yes.
What about your spouse or your mate? What about the house that you live in? Whether you rent it or whether you buying it, you're still supposed to be a good steward. Just because you're renting and somebody else owns it doesn't mean you dog it out.
That's right.
Because that's your home. What about your car? I've heard people tell me, I'm not going to ride those people in my car. God didn't give you that car just for you. And I know one specific person that said that don't have that car anymore.
Because we draw back to us what we put out.
That's right.
Got it.
You know, we forget that most of us are just one paycheck or one catastrophic event from being those people.
Right. And we see a lot of homeless people around us, and in many states, they're making it illegal to feed homeless people. And I know for a number of months, we were out feeding people in the Augusta, Georgia area. And I think at one time a police officer came up to Dr. Brooks and was saying, "Hey, do you have a permit to feed these folks?" And it's very disheartening, folks, for someone to tell you that you cannot feed another hungry spiritual being having a human experience, because the human part of them is hungry. Okay, so at what point in our lives do we stop people telling us that we can't take care of one another in a loving way? Because even during Jesus's journey, Jesus instructed us to feed our brethren and sisters, right? So I got something here. Thanks, Jennifer McNeil, for joining us. Thank you so much. I got a couple responses, and I want to go ahead and read them. So bear with me for a moment. Coretta said 30, 60, and 100-fold you reap. So that's great. So you got to remember, when you're putting things out there in the ether, you got to remember that you may think you might get just 10%. Okay, just 10%. But because of the infinite's grace, because of God's grace, because of the higher power's grace, because of source energy's grace, because of Buddha's grace, because of Allah's grace. And I say that because everybody identifies how they identify God in different ways. But I'm saying all this to say God is all encompassing. God is God, okay? And what I'm saying is this: however you view it, however you view God, remember this, that saying that people say, you can't beat God's giving no matter how hard you try. Coretta just made a profound statement. Sometimes your increase is 30%. Sometimes your increase is 60%. Sometimes your increase is 100-fold. Any of you listening right now did something for somebody, and then it came back before you even got back home, or before you got down the hallway, or before you got down the walkway, it came back over 100-fold. Anybody identify with that? If you know what I'm talking about, shoot me some hearts, hit me some thumbs up, because I know there are people on here right here today that are living testimonies to the fact that what you put out, you bring back. But the most important thing that I learned is, when you do something, do it without expecting anything back.
That's exactly right.
Do it without saying, oh, I'm going to do this for you, but God, I'm waiting for God to bless me back. No, I think you might be waiting for someone to give you accolades for what you've done.
And
you want gratitude.
Everybody having to know what
you've done. And do it with a heart full of love. That's one thing that I've always learned, to do things with a heart full of love. Even me. There's a lady on YouTube, Facebook. Her name is Daniel Pierce, and she's wonderful. She talks about, she teaches people how to buy tax properties and things of that nature. But Daniel Pierce was on like 2-something in the morning about a week or so ago, when I was up, and I caught her live. And it's funny because it was a handful of us at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're working on our businesses, right? And that's the kind of grind you got to have. But I remember Daniel Pierce said one time something about, when you give something out to somebody, don't be looking for it to come back kind of the way you gave it. And that's not how she said it. But basically, that's, that's what she kind of put out. And just give it with the thought of giving. So thanks, Coretta, for saying that. Very, very powerful. Thank you so much. Sheandra Hardy out of Atlanta, Georgia said, Sister Dr. Brooks, you're preaching that truth. So that's the thing. We gotta be truthful about this thing, and we gotta say, in order for our lives to change, that's right, we gotta change. We gotta make the change, because it starts from within. Chubbs Morton, it's good to see you, brother. Good to see you. You guys love gospel music. Chubbs Morton is the man that you want to hear. He's got beautiful music out. Get at him, Chubbs Morton. Chubbs, leave your information down here so we can buy your albums, CDs, whatever you got out. I said albums, I just dated myself, but I meant CDs too. I said albums, that's right, I said it. But in any case, support Chubbs. He's our man. Okay, Quanisha Dorsey joined. Hey, Quamisha, yeah, it's Quamisha. Good to see you. And Sheandra had something to say. She wanted to say that gratification opens the doors to blessing. It makes the atmosphere conducive to receive and respond with blessings. What do you got to say about that, Doc?
It does. Gratification and attitude of gratification. Not only does it open the doors to blessings, but you know what? It makes you feel better.
Yeah.
A lot of us are suffering from anxiety and stress because a lot of us, our attitudes are wrong. If you have an attitude of gratitude, you can reduce that. And I have to tell my students, and I tell my members, and I tell them just about everybody, stress will kill you. Do whatever you've got to do to change your mindset so that you don't start stressing over things. I have yet to figure out or to see where stress actually answers the problem.
Right.
It makes one.
Wow. Could
Yes.
you say that again?
Stress has never answered a problem. It just makes one. And you know what? It makes a bigger one. I can tell you that from life experience. I think I've shared this with Lotus. My appendix ruptured before they could get me into surgery. I was 23 years old on my first job, and I had a whole lot of stressors. And the government, I was working for the federal government, and they brought in a psychologist about 2 weeks before this happened. And he gave us a stress test, the stress assessment. That was the first time I'd ever taken it. My score was 638. And he looked at me and said, if you don't do something drastic, you're going to have a catastrophic illness within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, I was fighting for my life. I got to the hospital. They couldn't figure out what was going on. My temperature was 102 and rising. My white blood cell count was out the roof. I was in so much pain. All I could do was just lay there and sweat. And when they went to prep me for surgery the next morning, my appendix ruptured. And they had to rush me into surgery. The next day, the surgeon came to me and he said, I don't know what's stressing you, but I need you to get it taken care of because your appendix ruptured because of stress, because your appendix was covered with blisters. And when you don't do something to get stress out of you, it has to manifest somewhere. So it is working inside you. It causes diabetes. It causes high blood pressure. It causes heart problems. And I'm not so sure that it's not the reason why some of us are suffering from autoimmune diseases where our bodies are turning on itself. But stress is one of those things that we have got to deal with. And I'm learning that you don't procrastinate. I'm learning that when issues come up, you need to handle the issue. Jennifer McNeil has a phrase that I really love. You've got to have the intestinal fortitude to take care of the situation. Because if you don't, it's going to take care of itself. And you're not going to like the answer that it gives you.
Right. I had a wonderful person come on and talk about what goes on when we have stress in our life. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of times when we have stress in our life, we don't know what to do. We don't know who to turn to.
Right.
Because a lot of times we have people around us that are under stress themselves. A lot of times when we feel like we broke, guess what?
Everybody around us is broke.
And a lot of times it's that way because we are not focusing on enhancing our lives and making our lives better and getting around people that, are living in such a way that we want to live. So what I wanted to share with you is this. When Life Happens by William Jackson. Magnificent book. And I highly encourage you to have something to go to that when life happens, because it's going to happen and it's unequivocal and it will and can take you out of here.
To reading, studying, trying to figure out how to help yourself.
Exactly.
And I say that because we have a lot of illnesses and many of us are taking a lot of medications, which we're introducing chemicals into our body. But I'm old enough to remember when my grandmother used to take us out in the country and we would get certain herbs and we would get certain types of leaves and things, and that we would do our own healing.
Yes.
Because you can't tell me that God built a world that is so intricate that he didn't place in this world the things that help us heal when we have an issue. But we have to do the work to find it.
That's the truth.
We can't wait on somebody else to do it for us.
That's true.
And that's what happens with a lot of us. We're waiting on somebody else.
That's true.
We're looking for the answer outside of ourselves when the answer is in here.
Doc, I see Daisy just posted. She said, if you use the power of I am, it helps change your mindset. It helps you do better and be better.
That's right.
Wow, very profound. And then I saw hey Diane Cole, good to see you. Jennifer McNeil is on with us. Thanks, Jennifer, for joining us. Jennifer put on here, she said absolutely. And many of you hopefully know that Jennifer McNeil, got to tell you, she is the author of a book called Stripe, Strength, and Lipstick. And this is the book right here. You got to get this book. Many of you are going through life, and you're taking some real gut punches and punches in the face, and you don't know how to overcome. And if you're trying to overcome punches in the face or being the only one, the only woman, the only black person, the only heterosexual, the only same-sex oriented person, the only short person, the only tall person at your job or in whatever capacity, this book will help you stand up to that challenge and become triumphant over that challenge. Remember, Stripe, Strength, and Lipstick by Jennifer McNeil. And Jennifer McNeil, she said, all right now, intestinal fortitude, believe it or not, we all have it. And on yesterday, when she joined me live, she explained what intestinal fortitude is. And I'm going to be bringing Jennifer back the next time I'm in Augusta, Georgia. I'm going to bring her back so she can talk about that some more. Now I got another, thanks Jennifer, by the way, I've got another magnificent person, Latifa Muhammad, amazing, amazing writer. Okay, she said that information about stress, about how it manifests in your body and attacks the most vulnerable part of your body. She said that's real talk right there. So amen. Thank you for chiming in there, Latifa. And Jennifer McNeil came back and also said stress is a killer. We need more conversations on this topic. So having said that, I'm going to ask all of you, chime in. Let me know when you want us to talk about stress and how it is a true killer. Those of you that have suffered from cancers, diabetes, fibromyalgia, arthritis, high blood pressure, guess what? One of the number one contributing factors of your ailment is what?
Stress.
That's correct. Stress. Jennifer said something too. She said also, what happened to being humble? Woo!
Yeah.
What happened to being humble?
Somewhere, somehow, we think that humility and meekness is a weakness.
And you know what? Jen also said this. She said, we call that, I guess, when we're trying to live up to the standards of other people or trying to be so big that we forget that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Jennifer said, we call that trying to impress everyone else instead of acknowledging ourselves. And I think that goes back to what you were saying.
Right.
Why are we looking on the outside of self when we need to look on the inside of self? Jen, high five. Thank you.
But you know what happens? And I see this a lot, especially in the African American race. Somewhere, someone told us, because I'm lighter than Lotus, then I must be better than Lotus. And I'm not. We are all the same. It goes right back to this thing about us trying to compartmentalize people. It doesn't matter what you look like.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what size you are. It doesn't matter whether you are articulate or not. Everybody has purpose. Everybody is important. And we have got to start living that way. Because you can say one flip comment to somebody and you can destroy them for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. One of the things that happened to me, because I'm one of those really sensitive persons, God gave me this gift called discernment, and I can feel what's in the room. Mm-hmm. And so I feel what you say and do to me even stronger. I sing, but I'm a first soprano, and I can sing into the rafters. And when I was a child, I was singing, and somebody close to me said, you need to shut up with that squeaky voice. And it took another 40 to 45 years for me to get to the place where I would let you hear me sing. Because I had to overcome that one voice, that one comment, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And it's not always your life or death. It could be somebody around you that you say one flip comment to. Mm-hmm. And you can either help them excel or you can help them become self-destructive.
Yes.
And so we have to be careful. And we have to know that not only do we have purpose, but we have the power of God in us.
Yes. You know, Doc, I'm gonna let you know, and all of our viewers, again, thank you for joining us. And if some of you are just joining us, I want to let you know that we have the magnificent Dr. Sandra Brooks, the author of The Pursuit of Purpose, with us today. And we're talking about a couple of things. One of the things we talked about is the I am. And as many of you know, Mr. Joel Osteen, he wrote The Power of I Am. And Dr. Sandra Brooks eloquently explained what the I am means. And that's why it's critically important to watch what you attach to your I am. Because if you say to yourself you are poor, if you say to yourself that you are broke, guess what? You will manifest. And we also talked about living in the now. Living in the now. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book, Now, right? In the Now. And he talked about just taking a moment out of our busy day, even first thing in the morning when you get in your car, sit down, breathe. Because sometimes that might be the only time during the day in that 8-hour or sometime 10-hour or 12-hour shift that you're working, that you're going to be able to take time to breathe in that good asprana, right? And say, thank you, Lord. And just be in the moment. Be in yourself. Breathe in how the car smells. Breathe in how you smell, because I know when y'all go to work in the morning, you're looking good, you're smelling good, you got on your nice smelling cologne or perfume, or many of us are just natural, but our natural body scent, our natural fragrance is just so wonderful. So take all of that in. Give yourself that moment. And that's what we were talking about. And then the Dr. Sandra Brooks also talked about things that are yet to come. When you're here in the now, you got to remember the energy you put out in the now is going to come back to you, and it's going to usher in the yet to come. Because definitely the third law of motion, whatever
you sow, you're going to reap it again, but you're going to reap it multiplied.
The third law of motion says there is an equal and opposite action and reaction, right?
That's right.
So if we know the third law of motion, we know that we have to be smart enough to put things out that we bring back. And let me tell you just how magnificent our minds are that are on this live right now, because Coretta Annette Smith also said the same thing you said earlier. She said this because I was scrolling through. She said life and death is in the power of our tongue. And that's what we just talked about. That's what Doc just said. We have to be careful what we speak. We can speak blessings, we can speak healing, or we can speak damnation over our lives. And Yolanda Adams said it very well. Sometimes you have to speak a positive word over yourself. When everything else is going wrong, when things are going the way that you don't think they should go, still stand up inside yourself and speak a positive word, and have the intestinal fortitude, like Jennifer McNeil, the author of this magnificent book, I said it, Stripes, Strength, and Lipstick. Jennifer said, have the intestinal fortitude to believe it or not. We all have it. So have that intestinal fortitude to believe in yourself. And so we're going to move on to the next thing we wanted to share with you. We wanted to talk about how things are changing in the atmosphere among us. Hey, Jermaine Taylor, how you doing? Jermaine just chimed in a minute ago. He said, life is based on what you put in, you get out. Fantastic. Excellent point. Latifa Muhammad, even fighting the good fight, fighting against injustice can be stressful. So finding the balance is crucial. That's awesome. That's awesome. And Latifa, I encourage you and I invite you to come and be on my live, because you know what? A lot of us don't know how to be in balance. I struggle with that. And I had to learn how to find balance. And sometimes you might have your spouse or a good friend or even your mom or your dad. They help to balance you out, because sometimes we can get a little crazy. Yes. I know I can. I don't know about y'all. I know I can only speak for me.
But balance is important. And that's one of the things that sparked this book, because I've always had issues with boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that happens is when I come into a relationship with anybody, and it doesn't have to be a love relationship, it can be a work relationship or whatever it is. One of the first things that I insist is that we have to establish boundaries, because I need to know where it fits.
Right.
And so many of us have issues with boundaries.
Yes.
And that's one of that book. Mm-hmm. And some of these issues that we've talked about today, it brings us to, there's a paradigm shift that is occurring mm-hmm. spiritually, physically, however way you want to do. If you are discerning at all, you can feel that things are changing, mm-hmm. that what used to be is not working for what is coming through, and that is going to be. Yes. And so things are having to change. Does that mean that the principles change? No. It is the manifestation and the way that we work with what we have that is changing. Lotus alluded to the fact that we've been out under the bridge working with the homeless. One of the things that I did, we had space, mm-hmm. and we had services in that space, but we closed that space down and we went into the community, because ministry is in the community. And when I look at the New Testament, I see Jesus in the community where the people are. Mm-hmm. There are very few instances that you found him inside the synagogue. Mm-hmm. And anytime he went inside the synagogue, there was always an issue.
Yes.
But there are so many people that are looking for significance. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for the answer of, why am I here? Mm-hmm. And I can't find those people sitting inside a building, because that building now becomes the barrier, right, between the message that I have, mm-hmm. and those that need the message. That paradigm is occurring, and I hear it all over everywhere. I was mm-hmm. sitting in my dad's church, which is a country Baptist church, and I heard the pastor say, we're going to start feeding the homeless. And I was like, y'all got homeless? And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh my God. They're going to feed the homeless. And I'm hearing it everywhere, that ministries are starting to go out into the community. And the other paradigm that you're going to find out is that it's going to change how it looks. Mm-hmm. I told Lotus today, because both of us love Steve Harvey. And I told her,
I love Steve.
Steve Harvey is one of the most dynamic and best pastors in the world today. And you know what's interesting about that? Steve Harvey doesn't have a church. He's not standing in a pulpit on Sunday. Nobody said that the message of God was only supposed to go through from a pulpit in a building on Sunday morning. He said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I also. The church is not the building. We're the church. And when we gather and we give the message, and you know what? And sometimes the message doesn't even mention God. Look at the book. Which book is it? Ruth, Esther is one of those books. Never mentions God. But the message is clear. And the thing is the message.
And you know what, Doc? I was on a show, and they had a guest on the show, and he was talking about a certain somebody being different and having this identity crisis and all this. But my question was, look how many millionaires this man has made through his efforts and entrepreneurship and his philanthropy? How many of these negative naysayers have taken the time to make millionaires? How many of these negative naysayers have pulled people who were off the street or who couldn't make it and needed training but couldn't afford training, who he has put through training? He did not give them a fish. He taught them how to fish so that they can fish for the rest of their life. But catch this. They can teach someone else how to fish so that they too can fish. And this is what I realized when I heard that person say that, and when I stood up for the endeavors that this other person made. The same thing you just said. Don't miss the message. You can't get so caught up on, oh, this person loves this person, or that person goes out and rides a motorcycle. I used to ride a motorcycle, but just because I ride a motorcycle and I might wear a leather vest and leather boots and I look cute too, y'all.
No, the major one is that they didn't hoop.
Oh, they didn't hoop. They didn't hoop. Yes.
Get over it. What was the message?
What was the message? I want to say hey to Miss Barrios. There we go. Let me go back and check her out. Mickey Barrios, thanks for joining us. So remember, don't miss the message. And also remember, Annette, Cameron Christian, hey, thanks for joining us. Remember this. There is a paradigm shift and things are changing. Things are not changing just in the environment right around you. Things are changing globally. And my question to you is, what change are you going to make in your life? 2020 is coming up, and we can't stop it. It's coming. No matter what you got planned, no matter what you want to do, it's coming. Now, the question is, because you talked about setting effective boundaries. Mm-hmm. And in this book right here, Stripe, Strength, and Lipstick, Jennifer McNeil will tell you about setting boundaries, okay? And if you even look at When Life Happens at Will Jackson's book, it's going to talk to you about boundaries. And if you still go a step further, trying to find your pursuit, the pursuit of purpose, Dr. Sandra Brooks will also tell you some things about setting boundaries. Now, this is my question to everybody, and even to myself. What boundaries have you not set before in 2019? Think about that. What boundaries have you not set in 2019? And those of you that's not afraid to be real and transparent with yourselves, put it down in the comment. Let's get real. What boundary did you not set in 2019 that has caused you so many problems, so much heartache, so much grief, so much loss?
And on the flip side, what boundaries have you built that you need to tear down so you can move forward?
And what boundaries are you going to create to be more successful? What boundaries are you going to tear down in 2019 so that you can make more effective, more fruitful boundaries for 2020? And if you feel secure in saying so, just like our friend up here, I'm going back up here because I want to make sure that I say this right. Just like Coretta Smith said, the power of life and death is in the tongue. What are you willing to speak into your future for 2020? Go ahead, type it down below. Give me some thumbs up, give me some hearts. I just want to thank you for joining me today. We've been before you for a while. You guys have been amazing. And don't forget, Latifa Muhammad, great comment. We need to get together and bring that issue up because it's definitely strong, definitely solid. So Dr. Brooks, I just want to thank you for coming on, talking to us. You've been amazing. You were able to talk to us about about being in the now and things that are yet to come. You've talked to us about upcoming paradigm shift. And I'm really ready to move forward, but I just can't move forward without you telling us about some upcoming great stuff in your life. I know you got a new channel coming. So
Well,
can you tell me about that?
For right now, I have a group on Facebook. It's called Pursuing Purpose and Destiny with Dr. Sandra D. Brooks. And what I'm going to start doing as of next week, Wednesday, and it'll be every Wednesday at 5:30, that I will be doing a journey. Wait a minute. Let me get myself straight. It is the Pathways to Purpose. And it'll be a live discussion, and we're going to start it within that group. And within that group, what you will find also is the link to purchase the book, The Pursuit of Purpose, which for right now is only $10 until 2020. And so I'm looking forward to having discussions. I'm looking forward to being able to help people find their way to their purpose and to their destiny ultimately. But one more thing I want to say is that what I found is that it is a process. It is a spiritual journey. And you have to have the intestinal fortitude to walk down those pathways. Because some of the things that you're going to find out about yourself, you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some things that you're going to have to give up that you really don't want to give up.
Yep.
But if your ultimate aim is to be the person that you were created to be and to do whatever it was God placed you on this earth to do, you have to do what it takes to get where you need to be. God bless you. I thank you for listening to me today. And I thank Lotus for having me on today. Forgive my voice. I'm having a little sinus issue, but my voice stayed. So God bless you all.
Thanks, Dr. Brooks. I appreciate you being here today. And I want to thank all of you that are on with us. We really appreciate you. I want to also thank Dr. Princess Fumi. Talked to her earlier this week. She has an amazing book out. It is a conglomerate of 18 women who've experienced some hardships that are so profound and so life-changing. You definitely want to get their book. Dana Priyanka Hammond is on. She is one of the writers of the book. And so, Dana, I'm going to ask you, leave the book information down there so that folks can buy the book. It would be just magnificent if you did that. And also, Miss McNeil, Jennifer, please leave your book information down there so that everybody can see and purchase the book, Stripes, Strength, and Lipstick by Jennifer McNeil. And I know William Jackson, he's on tour right now, but guess what? When Life Happens by William Jackson is a magnificent book. And also, please don't forget to get Tracy's book. Tracy is a phenomenal writer. She has also collaborated with about 5 other writers. The book is called When Warriors Talk, God Listens. When Warriors Talk, God Listens. So that's Tracy Kincaid. Tracy Kincaid. She's also in one of the finale episodes of Empire. So Tracy Kincaid, When Warriors Talk, God Listens. Stripes, Strength, and Lipsticks by Jennifer McNeil. When Life Happens by William Jackson. And don't forget Dana Priyanka Hammond. She has a magnificent story to tell you about. We have a lot of sex trafficking going on right now, and she was a victim of the sex trafficking. Get her book, and she will share her story of how she overcame, okay? And please, please, please do not forget Dr. Sandra Brooks with The Pursuit of Purpose. And somebody, anybody, make sure you're good to yourself. Make sure you're good to someone else. Coretta, Dana, Jermaine, Latifa, Mario. Hey, Mario, how you doing? Daisy, Angela, Shiandra, Jennifer, Wayne. Hey, Wayne. Wayne and Sherry Coleman. Herb O'Connor. Love him. 100 Black Men of Augusta. Check out Herb O'Connor. He's a magnificent guy. So everybody on here, Alexander Ortiz, thank you for coming on. Annette Cameron Christian, thank you for coming on. Jermaine Taylor, Daisy, Latifa, just everybody. I appreciate you. Mickey Barrios, thank you so much. Chubbs Moore and Quanisha Dorsey, thank you so much for joining me. Sometimes I can't get to everybody's name, but if I've missed your name, just take it for love and know that I love you and God loves you too. Now remember, 2 things. I'm going to make this quick. 2 things. Nothing can dim your light. And the only person that can dim your light is who you give your power to. So until I see you next time, remember that I am your girl, Lotus Riche, with Lotus Riche Ignites Life Coaching and Consulting, where I'm bringing inspiration to all the nations. You know why? Because I love helping you ignite and take flight. Mwah. Thanks. It's great. I enjoyed it. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. We had excellent audience. Oh my God, they're so intelligent. Just man, they're amazing. Amazing.